Well, it's raining like crazy. Again, it's a Monday and it's raining. I'm in Kinston, North Carolina, and that view right there is a replica of a Civil War Confederate ironclad, the CSS Neuse. It's here in Kinston, North Carolina. This is the only, as it says anyway, it's the only full-scale model replica of a Civil War ironclad in existence. That I told Judy I was coming to look at this thing today, and I didn't really know why. I just wanted to come see it. And she said to me, "This is like that world's biggest ball of string, isn't it? You got to drive the back roads to find it, or the world's largest frying pan hanging up out in the field." And she may be right, I don't know, but if the rain holds off, I'm gonna at least walk around it a little bit and get a few views of what a Civil War ironclad looks like. And then maybe talk about it a little bit on the drive back home, because it's a 2-hour drive back to the state park where the camper is. It's flat bottomed and like 158 feet long or something like that. I don't remember how many feet wide. I read a little bit about it, and I don't believe that's actually iron up there. It's a replica, but at the waterline it was supposedly, you know, iron armored. It was built here on the Neuse River. There's a museum right across the road, and the remains of the original ship were in that museum. Of course, it's closed on Monday. You know, story of my life anymore. Anywhere I go, they're not open. But this thing just astonishes me that a private individual, I believe, built this sort of as a museum. I don't know why this stupid camera just turned off, but it did. It's sort of acting up. This is apparently was built by a private individual. He wanted to build this as, I don't know, a heritage tribute, something. I got nothing when it comes to something like this. This big massive rudder on the back. Such clunky looking propellers. Nailed wood. Obviously a replica like this would not hold water at all, I'm sure. And the stairs are closed off. Apparently I can't go upstairs and look over the top, which is too bad. The CSS Neuse II galley crew. I guess it was a group of individuals that decided this is something they wanted to do. That's too bad I can't get up there to see what it would look like up on the top. If you watched last Monday's bonus sermon from Milledgeville, Georgia, you know I talk about visiting places like this and always looking for a hook, so to speak, the hook. What is this that fits into my idea that everything in life is spiritual? And I believe there is that. And I've been pondering that as I drive down this way today a little bit. I'd read about this, and I still just find it so hard to believe that a group of people would go to the expense and build something like this. I mean, this is a nice little park. Maybe the town's giving them a price break, but you know, this cost a lot of money. Why do it? And that I just honestly don't know. Historical value, maybe. You know, there aren't many of these. This is the only full-scale one left. Is it sort of Civil War heritage type thing? I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gun ports for each of 2 guns, I believe. I think this only had 2 guns. The original Neuse never fought. It was built here in the Neuse River. Like so many of the Confederate ironclads, back in the woods, there were battles off and on around it. It ran aground. They got it off, they repaired it, it ran aground again. Apparently the Neuse never got out of the Neuse River near Kinston, and I'll have to look. I don't even know what the Neuse River empties into. The Cape Fear, perhaps? But it never got to where it could do any good. And when Union forces invaded Kinston, it was blown up. It was set afire and scuttled, and there was a large explosion and the ship sank. So I never saw any action whatsoever, like many Confederate ironclads that never saw any action. They were built by ingenuity with very little expertise, with very little materials. They were built with sometimes rails, railroad rails for armor. They were built back in the woods on creeks and rivers, and the CSS Albemarle was built that way. The CSS Atlanta, the CSS Tennessee were all built that way, and they had very, very little success. And yet the Confederate States realized the Union's Navy was going to strangle the South, and it did. And this was an attempt to do something about that. It just wasn't successful. And that sort of fills me with 2 thoughts a little bit. Why is it we do things that we probably know going into them aren't going to be successful? They're not going to work. And yet we do it anyway. It's not a very seaworthy design. It's a flat bottomed, more like a barge than a boat. Anywhere off of a slow river would be almost uncontrollable. Like the CSS Virginia, which was the former USS Merrimack. It was so heavy, so big, so underpowered that it was almost unmaneuverable, which is why the USS Monitor ran circles around it at Hampton Roads. I have a feeling this would be something the same, probably. That looks like it was wood up on top, so it's not iron up there. It's just painted to sort of look like iron. I don't know if this is a replica, if it was meant to have a ram or not. Maybe, because the thought was get up whatever steam you could and ram the other ship to sink it. I've seen pictures of the inside, and the smokestack goes all the way down to the lower deck, where there's open in the living area a steam boiler for the engine that doesn't look anywhere near big enough to move this thing at all. Huh. So I don't know, am I looking at the world's largest ball of string? Maybe. Am I looking at one more like failed heritage thing? We spend so much money and so much time sometimes on things that are so futile. And I don't know if this is it or not. Is it a labor of love for, remembering innovation and tradition and a diehard spirit? Or is it some of those down here in the South, especially in eastern North Carolina, that don't even use the word Civil War? It was that war of northern aggression, and they keep on with this crazy, false, illogical mentality that was such a glorious cause in the Civil War. There was nothing glorious about it. I don't know. Is it that? Maybe. Some of it. It is an impressive looking replica ship though. That's for sure, especially considering it was built out in the woods on the banks of a creek. The idea of building a Confederate ironclad on the Neuse River back in a creek just is amazing to me on one level. This is not like the massive shipyard support that John Erickson had for the development of the USS Monitor, which fought at Hampton Roads and then later became the example, the paradigmatic example of so many Union ironclads in the Civil War. The technology the Union had available was just astonishing compared to the Southern agrarian lack of technology down in the Confederacy, that the Confederate States of America should have seen that coming at the very beginning. They should have realized that if we get into a shooting war with the North, there's no way we can win. On one level, you've got the utter futility built of pride and arrogance and all the other things that went on there. And yet you had this can-do spirit. These guys that actually built something like that ship in a mosquito-infested swamp. You gotta admire that on some level, do you not? I do. My dad had a favorite saying. He was good at bow-jacking things. My brother used that term as an insult often. Oh, Dad bow-jacks everything. It means he jury rigs it. It means he makes it work. But my brother, the engineer, would say he makes it work, but it doesn't work very well. He doesn't have any plans. He doesn't have any drawings. And Dad would always say, I grew up in the Depression, Sometimes we had to make something work literally with baling wire, maybe some duct tape or something like that. Well, it wouldn't have been duct tape. It wasn't invented back in the Depression, but I think you get my point. An ironclad like this one was bow-jacked. There was so little iron and steel for armor plate in the southern states that many of them just tore up abandoned railroads and used the railroad rails themselves as their armor plate. I want to say the CSS Tennessee, or maybe the CSS Albemarle, built here in North Carolina, back near the Uwharrie River, was one of those examples. I could be wrong. I'm not sure if I'm remembering from reading my history of ironclads in the Civil War or not. And it was a favorite topic of mine growing up. It was just, there was something about these rickety, slow, horribly ventilated, dangerous ships. But they were, at the time, the cutting edge of technology. There were ships that didn't have masts, that didn't have sails, that were essentially impervious to cannon fire. And as such, they were also harbingers of another thing, this sense of warfare that had always been thought of as chivalrous, in a sense. The Battle of Agincourt, the French versus the English archers. If an archer lay down his weapons and surrendered, he was treated humanely. There wasn't even any thought of harming him or anything like that. Well, as technology grew, Gatling guns, better ammunition, better rifles, ironclads, the thought of surrender and being treated civilly kind of went by the wayside. And it was true that the idea of warfare chivalry died completely with World War I. So there's a real mix of messages and emotions when I see something like that. Part of it is, again, there's this, it's still so prevalent here in the South, this idea that somehow the Civil War was a glorious cause, and weren't we fighting for such a wonderful, utopia, the Confederacy, and that was not true. And some of that, frankly, is raising its ugly head again today, and all this backlash that treats words like DEI as something horrible, or those woke people trying to take our heritage away from us. I have relatives that use it like that, and when I try to tell them that my idea of what the word woke means is what Jane Fonda said, woke just means you give a damn about another person. That's all it means. It infuriates them when I say something like that. They don't want to hear it. I'm hitting up against what Dietrich Bonhoeffer said was not evil so much in Nazi Germany and in places where totalitarianism arises. It's stupidity. You see, against evil, you can try to persuade someone this is wrong. But when it's utter stupidity, they laugh off your persuasion. They're not going to listen to you. And that happens a lot. I don't know if that's the case with this replica ship here in Kinston or not. And far be it, it's not my place to judge the people's motives for building it. But at the same time, I admire them for doing it. It's just there's always that nagging thought. I don't know. It's a real complex series of things that I sense looking at something like that. I tip my hat and I go, wow, how did they manage to build something? And I look at the bravery. How did Confederate sailors have enough courage to serve in something like that? Because there were death traps. Everyone knew that if the USS Monitor got in trouble, like she did off of Cape Hatteras, no one would get out of the ship alive. There was no way to do it. There were only an entrance to the turret and two other entrances to the entire ship. You were never going to get the crew out if the ship was foundering, which is what happened. All hands went down with her. These were the same way. They were entombed. They were sealed in. So if the ship did take a hit, if it did catch fire, if the boiler in the engine did blow up, well, you weren't going to get out. I don't know if I'd have the courage to serve in something like that. I just don't know if I could do it, honestly. My sense of self-preservation is far, far too advanced to just walk into something like that. But they did. And the coin flips to the other side, and you go, why? Why did they believe in such a horrid lost cause so fervently that they would do that? We human beings are complex, complicated, and indeed very often broken creations, are we not? Well, maybe that's the hook. The CSS Neuse bears testimony to what Charles Dickens could call the best of times, the best of us, the ingenuity, the creativity, the wherewithal to build something like that. But it also bears testimony to the worst of us, because it was being built to kill others. It's like we can't have one without the other, And in fact, we go back to here's where it gets to spiritual. Without God's redemption, that's it. That's what we always do. Always. Sounds like the book of Ecclesiastes, does it not? That's where we get when we throw all our eggs in the basket of warfare. Technologically marvelous things we can build. but we build them and use them for the worst possible purposes. Vanity of vanities, says Koheleth, the preacher of Ecclesiastes. Maybe that's what I saw back there. Or maybe it was just the world's biggest ball of twine, or the world's biggest frying pan hanging by the country road. Either way, wasn't a bad way to spend a day off on a Monday afternoon, driving through thunderstorm after thunderstorm. So, hope you enjoyed looking at the CSS Neuse II at Kinston, North Carolina. I did. We'll talk more. Sooner or later, we'll talk more. So, between now and then, take care. God bless. Stay well. Take care of yourselves. And if you can, take care of somebody else too.